The man in the gray suit hall was grand. Walls of polished marble reflected light from the chandeliers above. Businessmen in designer suits stood with drinks in hand, speaking in low voices, laughing behind perfect teeth. Cameras were everywhere. This was no ordinary meeting. This was a signing ceremony for one of the biggest tech acquisitions in the world. At the center of it all stood Graham Silvers, a billionaire CEO with a silver tongue and a cold heart. He had built his empire on ruthless deals and broken promises. He believed money fixed everything, and today, he was about to finalize the purchase of a small but fast-rising tech company called LumenCore, a company most thought would quietly disappear into the folds of his empire. But what no one expected was the man LumenCore sent to sign the final deal, Keanu Reeves. The moment he walked into the hall, heads turned, not because he was a movie star, not because of fame, but because he didn't belong. He wore a simple gray suit, no tie, his hair a little long, like he hadn't combed it with the same desperation as the others. His shoes weren't shiny, they were worn, like he had walked through real places, not just offices and red carpets. Someone whispered, "Why is he here?" Another voice chuckled, "Is he signing autographs or stocks?" Graham Silvers saw him from across the room and smiled, not kindly but with the smooth, thin smile of a man who smells weakness. He walked over with a group of executives behind him, tall, proud, powerful. "Mr. Reeves," Graham said, extending his hand. "What a surprise. I thought LumenCore would send a lawyer." Keanu shook his hand calmly. "They sent someone who understands the company." Graham laughed, a soft, fake sound. "And do you?" Keanu didn't answer. Instead, he looked around the room. "This place is beautiful, but it's strange how quiet it feels under all the noise." Graham raised an eyebrow. "I suppose that's deep." Keanu smiled. "No, it's just true." Reporters watched. Cameras flashed. But what no one noticed was how Graham Silvers had just made his first mistake. He underestimated the man in the gray suit. The backstory no one knew was this: LumenCore wasn't started for profit. It was started by a dying man and engineer who had lost his son in a hospital where power failed during a storm. The software he built was designed to keep vital systems running even in disaster. It was not built to sell, it was built to save. Before he passed, the founder gave the controlling shares to someone who had once sat by his side in a children's ward. Someone who didn't talk much, someone who understood silence better than words. That man was Keanu Reeves. As the ceremony continued, the host invited everyone to take their seats. A stage had been set. At the center was a long table with 2 chairs, one for Graham, one for Keanu. The crowd leaned in. This was just supposed to be paperwork, a photo opportunity, but the energy in the room had shifted. Some of the younger entrepreneurs watched Keanu with quiet curiosity. The older ones looked bored, but Graham looked amused. The host began, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here to witness the official signing of the merger between LumenCore and Silvers Global." Keanu tuned the words out. He wasn't here to merge. He was here to protect. Graham picked up the pen. He signed the first part of the deal with a confident flick. Then he slid the document to Keanu. Keanu looked at it, slowly, word by word, line by line. People murmured. Graham smiled again. "Something wrong, Mr. Reeves? Or do you need a lawyer to help you read?" Keanu didn't flinch. Double quotes, "No," he said calmly. "I read every word. I just wonder why this contract gives you full rights to modify the technology without keeping its original function intact." Graham blinked. "Excuse me?" Keanu turned the paper to the camera. He pointed at a line buried in the middle. "This one, Clause 27. You reserve the right to reallocate resources as necessary, which includes removing the emergency override systems." The room went silent. Reporters looked up. Graham leaned in. "That's just standard language." Keanu stared at him, then changed it. Graham's face twitched. "You don't make demands here," he said, voice low. "You're here to sign, be the face, smile for the cameras." Keanu leaned back, his voice still soft. "I'm not here to smile. I'm here to make sure the company keeps saving lives." Graham chuckled. You really believe that story, don't you? Keanu's eyes darkened slightly. I lived it. The crowd was still. A young reporter raised her hand. Mr. Reeves, are you saying this deal could harm the original purpose of Lumen Core? Graham snapped. That's absurd. But Keanu lifted a small tablet. On it was a simulation. The software, stripped of its emergency power feature, failed under load. It showed hospital monitors shutting down during a blackout. The reporter's eyes widened. Did you plan to shut this feature down? She asked Graham directly. Graham's voice rose. This is nonsense. Fear tactics. Actors playing heroes. Keanu stood up. His voice was still quiet. I'm not acting. He pulled out a second document. A revised contract. Same terms, but with the original mission of the company protected. Emergency systems locked in. No tampering allowed. Sign this, he said, or the deal ends here. Graham stood to, trying to keep control. You can't just rewrite deals at the last second. I can. Keanu said, because I hold the controlling shares, and I never agreed to sell the soul of this company. Gasps spread through the room. A lawyer whispered to Graham, he's right. He has controlling vote. Without him, the board can't finalize. Graham froze. For the first time that day. He wasn't smiling. Keanu looked at him. Steady. You laughed when I walked in. Now you know why I'm here. Double quotes silence. Then, slowly, Graham sat down. His hand trembled as he picked up the new document. He signed. The room erupted in questions. Cameras flashing, voices rising. But Keanu turned to the host. Thank you for letting us speak truth today. Then he walked off the stage. No pride, no anger, just quiet purpose. Outside, a boy waited. No one knew him. He stood near the curb holding a photo of his sister, one who had survived because of Lumen Core's system during a flood in a remote hospital. Keanu stopped. The boy said, my sister is alive because someone didn't give up. Keanu knelt down. She's strong. So are you, the boy said. Keanu smiled. We all are, if we choose to be. He stood again and walked away, not knowing that inside that hall, the entire business world had just changed. Not because of money. Not because of fame, but because a quiet man in a gray suit chose to say no. The price of the storm didn't come immediately. The room had been full of light and cameras when Keanu walked out with the contract in his hand. The final signature protecting Lumen Core's mission. But storms don't start with thunder. They begin with silence. A silence that carries hidden anger. And behind that silence, Graham Silvers was already plotting. He sat in the empty hall after everyone left, the crowd gone, the lights dimmed, but his pride still burning like fire in his chest. He had been embarrassed publicly, and by someone the world called an actor, not a businessman. It wasn't just about losing control over Lumen Core. It was about losing face. In his world, image was power, and Keanu had stripped that away in front of the world. His assistant entered quietly. Sir, she said, the media is spinning it positively. They're calling it a victory for ethics. Graham didn't look at her. No, they're calling it a loss for me. He stood slowly, walked to the window, and stared out. Get me the full file on Reeves. I want everything. Contacts, contracts, mistakes. Anything we can use. She hesitated. Sir, do you want to? He turned sharply. We don't beat people like him with noise. We do it quietly, legally, and permanently. The next morning, Keanu sat at a small cafe near the edge of the city, sipping black coffee. He had come here for years. It wasn't fancy. The furniture was worn. The paint chipped near the doors. But the owner, Mrs. Lopez, always smiled when she saw him. You look tired, she said as she handed him his drink. Maybe, Keanu replied. Did something happen? I said the truth in a room full of lies. She nodded slowly. And now the lies want revenge? Keanu gave her a small smile. Something like that. He was right. Across the city, emails were being sent. Stories were being written. Not by journalists but by people who wore the name media consultant like a hidden knife. The first article came out later that day. Keanu Reeves blocks billion-dollar tech advancement experts say lives could be at risk. It was subtle. It didn't attack him directly. It used words like concerned scientists and confidential sources. It painted him not as a villain but as a naive celebrity who didn't understand business. Keanu read it in silence. Then another came. Can actors really lead tech deals? The Lumen Core controversy sparks debate. By the end of the week, 3 more headlines followed. Social media picked up phrases like Hollywood interference and ego over progress. Keanu's phone buzzed. Ethan was calling. You seeing this? Ethan asked. Yeah, Keanu said calmly. They're coming hard. These aren't just opinions. They're planted. I know. What do you want to do? Keanu looked out at the people walking by, the cafe kids with school bags, workers in faded uniforms, mothers carrying groceries. We wait, he said. Let them speak first. A few days later, Keanu visited a hospital on the outskirts of the city. No media, no announcements. He just walked in, holding a small tablet, the same tablet he used during the contract meeting. He showed the staff how the software worked, how it kept systems alive even during power cuts, how it had saved lives during storms and earthquakes across poor countries. One nurse, Maria, touched the screen gently. You helped build this. I helped protect it, Keanu said. Thank you, she whispered. Outside, someone took a photo. They didn't mean to hurt him, but that photo would be used. Graham Silvers smiled when he saw the photo posted online. He called his lawyer, released the old lawsuit. Sir, that case was dismissed. It was proven fake. I don't care. Just release the documents. Let the internet decide. Hours later, a new headline appeared. Lawsuit resurfaces against Keanu Reeves. Did he fake his involvement in a humanitarian project? It was an old case. Years ago, someone had accused Keanu of using their charity idea without credit. The court had thrown it out. No truth, no proof. But that didn't matter now. The story was public again. Keanu's single quotes inbox flooded. News stations requested interviews. Even people he trusted sent confused messages. Is this real? Did you really take someone's work? Keanu didn't answer any of them. Instead, he visited the grave of the man who had built Lumen Core, the founder, the father who lost his son. He sat on the grass beside the grave and whispered, there, rewriting the story. A gentle breeze passed over him, rustling the trees. He closed his eyes. But I won't let them erase you. A week later, Keanu released one video. No fancy production, no music, just him, sitting on a wooden bench outside. He looked into the camera and said, I didn't come into the tech world to make money. I came because I saw a man try to build something after losing everything. I watched him work day and night to create a system that could keep machines alive. When power failed, he did it with pain in his heart and fire in his hands. He saved lives. I just helped protect what he built. He paused. I won't respond to lies. I won't argue in public. But if you want to see the truth, visit any hospital using Lumen Core. Ask the nurses, ask the families. Truth doesn't hide behind headlines. It lives in people. Then he stood, nodded once, and walked away. The video went viral. Not because of its style, but because of its soul. Millions watched it. Many wept. Others reposted it with the words, silent strength. Even reporters who had once questioned him now started digging deeper into the source of the negative stories. And one name kept appearing, Graham Silvers. Behind the scenes, Graham was furious. Why isn't it working? He shouted at his team. People believe him, one of them whispered. Then, make them stop. But before they could plan the next move, something happened that changed everything. A former employee of Silvers Global stepped forward. Anonymous, afraid, but brave. He posted screenshots of emails, proof that Graham had ordered media campaigns to discredit Keanu, messages about planting doubt and controlling the story. It exploded across the internet. Hashtags like #WeStandWithKeanu and #TruthOverPower started trending. Graham Silvers issued a cold denial, but no one believed him. And then came the final blow. A video surfaced, security footage from a hidden boardroom meeting weeks before the signing. It showed Graham discussing how to gut the software for parts, how to sell its code to surveillance companies, how to remove its hospital use completely. The truth was now fully exposed. But the story wasn't over, because even when truth wins, the powerful don't give up easily. The secret off-Earth wind howled against the glass of the studio window as Keanu stood staring out. At the gray city below, a storm had rolled in overnight, dark clouds pressing low above the skyline. The news was everywhere now, from TV anchors to bloggers. Everyone was talking about Graham Silvers, the leaked footage, and how Keanu Reeves, an actor most people loved for his roles, had become a symbol of resistance against greed. But for Keanu, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the start of something deeper, something more dangerous. He took a deep breath. In the distance, a siren wailed. The city kept moving, unaware that somewhere in a boardroom across town, new plans were being written in secret, because men like Graham Silvers didn't lose, not quietly, not without a backup. And that backup came in the form of a stranger in a dark coat who showed up at Keanu's door that evening. The man introduced himself as Mr. York. He didn't smile, didn't offer a business card. He sat at Keanu's kitchen table like he'd been invited, even though he hadn't. His suit was expensive, his shoes spotless, and his voice smooth, like someone used to making problems disappear. "You've caused quite a ripple," he said, looking around the quiet house. "My employer wants to offer you a way out." Keanu didn't sit. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Who's your employer, Mr. York?" Didn't answer directly. "Someone who believes in maintaining balance, someone who thinks the headlines have taken a wrong turn." Keanu narrowed his eyes. "You mean Graham? We don't use names." York replied, "Just solutions." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a contract, thick, official, full of legal words and buried intentions. Keanu didn't touch it. "You want me to what?" he asked. "Drop the story, issue a statement that the leaked footage was edited, say the deal was misunderstood, walk away with a generous payment and full rights to any future profits from Lumen Core." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "How much?" "50 million, York said without hesitation. "Tax-free. Wired to any account you want. Today." The number meant nothing to Keanu. Not really. He had enough to live, enough to give, enough to be quiet forever if he wanted. But this wasn't about money. "What happens to the hospitals?" Keanu asked. "What happens to the lives depending on this system?" York tilted his head. "They'll be adjusted. Other systems will take their place. Life moves on." "Mr. Reeves." Keanu walked slowly around the table and stood over the folder. "You think I care about being rich?" "I think," York said calmly, "that you care about peace, about not fighting forever. This can all be over. No more attacks, no more headlines, no more risk." Keanu stared at him. "Why me?" York hesitated, then said, "Because people believe you, and belief is dangerous." Keanu picked up the folder and ripped it in half. Then again, and again. He dropped the pieces on the table. "Tell your employer," he said, "that peace doesn't come from silence, it comes from justice." Double quotes. York stood, brushing off his coat. "You'll regret this." Keanu opened the door. "I've regretted worse." The man left, but he didn't slam the door. He didn't need to. His silence was enough. Over the next few days, new threats appeared. A private security camera outside Keanu's home was tampered with. A woman he had helped fund through college was suddenly audited by a mysterious agency. A small independent charity that used Lumen Core's software reported a hacking attempt. None of it was directly tied to Graham, but Keanu saw the pattern. He called Ethan. "They're squeezing the people around me," Keanu said. "Not me, them." Ethan's voice was steady. "Then we protect them, and we make it public." They contacted Lena, the journalist who had written the first big article about the deal. She had gone quiet after receiving threats, but now she returned, angry and focused. "We're going after the whole machine now," she told Keanu. "Not just Graham, the media firms, the shell companies, everything." Keanu nodded. "But we do it clean. No revenge, no noise." Lena agreed. But Graham Silvers had one more card to play. One morning, a video surfaced online. Grainy, edited, out of context. It showed Keanu in a private meeting years ago, speaking emotionally about not trusting government-run medical programs. It made him look cynical, harsh, like someone who believed in control, not compassion. Within hours, the video spread. People asked, "Is this the real Keanu?" News anchors debated whether his motives were pure or political. Keanu didn't respond immediately. Instead, he called the man who had recorded that meeting, an old friend from a veterans health initiative, a man named Jared. Jared picked up, already angry. "I don't know how they got that clip. I never released it. It's okay," Keanu said. "I know the full story, and now the world will too." He went on a live stream that evening. No script, no team, just him. He looked into the camera and said, "Years ago, I said something out of frustration. It wasn't about politics. It was about seeing people suffer while systems failed them. And yes, I got angry. Yes, I doubted. But that moment led me to something better. It led me to take action, to support real tools that help real people. If you judge me by one sentence, you'll miss the story. And the story is I changed." He paused. "And that's the point. We all can." The live stream went viral. Again, because people don't want perfect. They want real. Behind closed doors, Graham Silvers was unraveling. His plan had failed. His media tricks had collapsed. Even his investors were pulling away. And then, one of his own partners came forward, offering evidence in exchange for protection. Graham was now under investigation, not just for fraud, but for something worse: abuse of emergency infrastructure, manipulation of public systems, and endangerment of human lives for profit. His empire was burning, and Keanu? He was finally free to focus on what mattered. He launched a quiet fund for hospitals in underdeveloped areas. He hired the very people Graham tried to silence. He didn't give speeches. He gave resources. And across the world, new systems powered by Lumen Core began saving lives again. Without delay. Without compromise. Without greed. Asterisk. The trial of truth courthouse was old, but the cameras outside made it feel like a movie set. Reporters lined the steps, flashes bouncing off stone columns. Some had been following the story from the beginning. Others just showed up now. That it was headline gold. But no matter why they were there, they all focused on one man as he stepped out of the car. Keanu Reeves. He wore the same kind of suit he always did. Plain, gray, no tie, no statement, just presence. His face was calm, but his eyes held weight. This wasn't about winning anymore. It wasn't even about protecting Lumen Core. It was about setting a precedent, proving that no one, not even the most powerful, could bury the truth. Graham Silvers arrived 10 minutes later. He wore black. His team surrounded him like a wall. Lawyers in sharp suits, advisors with folders, assistants with tablets. He didn't smile at the cameras this time. His jaw was tight, his hair too neat, his skin too pale under the morning sun. He looked like a man who had built a fortress and now stood in its ruins. The trial was about to begin. And the world was watching. Inside the courtroom, the air felt heavy. On one side sat Keanu, Lena, and a small team of ethical lawyers from the Public Interest Foundation. On the other side, Graham and his legal army filled the bench like a corporate army. The judge, an older woman with sharp glasses and a sharper mind, entered and called the room to order. The case was officially titled, "The People vs. Graham Silvers." The charges: conspiracy to defraud, illegal tampering with emergency systems, bribery, media manipulation, and endangerment of public safety. Graham's team tried to delay the process. They filed motions, claimed bias, questioned the validity of the leaked boardroom tapes. But the judge had seen enough. She allowed the trial to proceed. Day one began with witness testimonies. The first to speak was Maria, the nurse from the hospital, who had used Lumen Core during a blackout. She shared how the software had saved 3 children when the power grid failed. Her voice trembled, but her truth was clear. If that system had been removed like they planned, she said softly, those kids wouldn't be here. Graham's lawyer tried to shake her story. "Are you an expert in tech, Ms. Maria?" "No," she said. "I'm an expert in saving lives." The court fell silent. The judge nodded. "Witness will stand." On day 2, Lena took the stand. She walked the jury through the pattern: how misinformation was spread, how fake headlines were created, and how Keanu's image was deliberately targeted. She showed emails. She showed receipts. She spoke slowly, carefully, and with complete control. Graham didn't look at her once, but his lawyers looked nervous because the evidence was solid. And the world outside was paying attention. Hashtags were trending again. Hashtag trial of truth. Hashtag we stand with Keanu. Hashtag power vs people. But Keanu refused to read any of it. He stayed present. He stayed grounded. He spent his nights in a small apartment above a bookstore, far from the lights, far from the chaos. Sometimes he sat on the rooftop under the stars, thinking about the man who had built Lumen Core in grief and hope. Keanu never met his son, but he felt his presence in every courtroom breath, every truth spoken. On day 3, Graham finally spoke. He didn't seem angry. He seemed tired. His voice, once full of power, now sounded distant. I never meant to hurt anyone, he said. I was doing what businesses do, maximizing profit, restructuring. The prosecutor raised her voice. Even if that meant people would die. Graham paused. His lawyer stood quickly. Objection, but the judge allowed it. Graham didn't answer, because he couldn't. Then it was Keanu's turn. He didn't want to testify, but the public needed to hear from him. He stepped onto the stand and looked out across the room. The prosecutor asked, "Why did you get involved in Lumen Core?" Keanu spoke gently, "Because a man came to me with a story. Not a business pitch, not a product. A story. His son died because a hospital lost power. He didn't want revenge. He wanted change. I saw that pain, and I knew I had to help protect what he built." What about the fame? The money? Keanu smiled faintly. If I wanted fame, I'd have taken the interviews. If I wanted money, I'd have signed the original deal. The courtroom was still. The prosecutor asked, "What do you want now?" Keanu looked at Graham. And then at the judge. "I want the system to remember people. Not just numbers, not just charts. I want to believe that the world still values life over profit." The judge leaned forward. "You may step down, Mr. Reeves." He nodded once, then returned to his seat. The closing arguments began on day 5. Graham single quotes S. Lawyer tried to spin it. "Our client is a businessman. He operates in a harsh world, but he is not a criminal. He simply made decisions others disagreed with." The prosecutor followed. "This isn't about disagreement. This is about deception, about using power to silence truth, and about what kind of future we want to build, one ruled by profit, or one protected by principle." The jury left to deliberate. Hours passed. And then they returned. The courtroom held its breath. The foreman stood. "On the charge of conspiracy to defraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of tampering with emergency systems, guilty. On the charge of bribery, guilty. On the charge of media manipulation, guilty. On the charge of endangerment of public safety, guilty." Keanu closed his eyes. Not in triumph. But in release. It was over. Graham Silvers collapsed into his chair, his hands trembling. For the first time, his empire had no more walls to hide behind. The judge announced sentencing would follow, but for the people outside, justice had already spoken. When Keanu stepped out of the courthouse, the reporters surged forward. He held up a hand. "I don't have a statement," he said softly. "Just a message." They waited. "Tell the truth," he said, "even when it costs, even when it hurts, because truth is always worth it." Then he walked away. The cameras didn't chase him. The crowd didn't shout. They just watched, because the quiet man in the gray suit had once again done something rare. He had stood. And in doing so, he reminded the world that character still matters. Shadows after Justice courthouse steps were quiet now. No cameras. No noise. Just a cold breeze moving through the marble pillars where, days earlier, the world had watched the fall of Graham Silvers. 5 guilty verdicts, his name in disgrace, his empire in ruins. But for Keanu Reeves, the trial wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because while the court had spoken, the world beyond still whispered. And in those whispers, something dark was moving. Keanu spent the first few days after the verdict alone. He returned to his quiet apartment above the bookstore. The streets below were back to normal: delivery bikes, kids running, the hum of traffic. It almost felt peaceful. But peace didn't sit easily in his chest. Not yet. His phone buzzed. Lena was calling. "We have a problem," she said. Keanu didn't ask what. He just listened. Lena met him in the back of a small cafe, a thick folder in her hands. Her eyes were sharper than ever. "After the verdict, I started digging into the companies tied to Graham," she said. "We shut down his brand, but not his routes." She opened the folder. Before the trial ended, Graham quietly moved a huge portion of his investments into a company no one noticed. It's based overseas, and it just acquired a group of artificial intelligence developers. Keanu flipped through the documents, logos, transaction reports, foreign holdings. "What's it called?" he asked. Lena hesitated. "Argon Systems." Keanu paused. He had seen the name once before on a discarded prototype inside a Lumen Core lab. It was rejected, too dangerous, too unstable. A program that could override human command in emergency systems to maximize efficiency. It had been shelved because it was risky. Unethical. Now it was alive again. Later that night, Keanu called Ethan. They met under a bridge where no phones could be tracked. Ethan brought printouts, server traces, satellite reports. Argon Systems was funded by a shell company Graham formed years ago, Ethan said. "It's being run by one of his former executives, Jeffrey Mallon. You remember him?" Keanu nodded. "The one who called hospitals a wasteful market." "He's building something," Ethan said. "Not in the open, in private." Keanu leaned back. "Where?" "A private compound in Iceland, off-grid. No media, but one of our contacts. Got a signal trace. They're running tests there. Heavy ones." "What kind of tests?" Ethan looked serious. "Disaster simulations. But they're not using the Lumen Core model. They've stripped it, rebuilt it to decide who gets saved and who doesn't." Keanu's face tightened. "They're playing God." Ethan nodded. "And they don't want anyone stopping them." The next day, Keanu spoke at a small health summit. It wasn't live-streamed. No headlines. Just a room full of real people, doctors, nurses, tech workers. He stood at the front, hands in his pockets. "We won the trial," he said. "But the mission isn't over. Because corruption doesn't die in courtrooms. It hides, it waits, and it builds again." He paused. "What we created with Lumen Core was never meant to be sold. It was meant to serve, to protect. But now, there are people trying to twist it again." The room was silent. "So I'm asking for help," Keanu said. "Not money, not applause, just eyes, ears, people who care. Because the next battle won't be public. It'll be quiet, invisible, and just as important." After the meeting, dozens approached him. A software engineer offered code audits. A paramedic promised field tests. An old systems analyst gave him a hard drive of leaked files from Argon. The fight had moved underground. But Keanu wasn't alone anymore. A week passed. Then and suddenly, a new story broke. Private eye company announces disaster sorting system to optimize emergency responses. The press release was slick. It described how their eye could decide which areas were worth sending resources to during disasters based on economic impact, population value, and resource costs. No mention of ethics. No mention of humanity. Keanu saw through it immediately. He called Lena. "They're testing public response." She agreed. "They want to see if anyone will push back. If not, they go live." Keanu stared at the screen. "We stopped them before they do. They couldn't break into the compound. Too much security, too much risk. But they didn't need to. What they needed was light." Keanu contacted a woman named Priya, an investigative filmmaker. She had once exposed corruption in pharmaceutical pricing and paid the price for it. Now she worked in silence, off the grid. But when she heard the story, she said only one word: yes. They planned a quiet trip to Iceland. Ethan, Priya, and Keanu. No announcements. No digital trail. They traveled light. Keanu packed only what he needed: a notebook, a portable recorder, and the original Lumen Core prototype software, untouched. Still pure. Iceland was cold, stark, beautiful. They rented a small cabin far from the compound. Priya set up hidden cameras. Ethan found a ridge overlooking the facility. Keanu, he waited. For days, they observed. No movement during the day. At night, lights flickered from deep inside the buildings. On the fifth night, a convoy arrived. Trucks. Equipment. And one face Keanu recognized instantly. Jeffrey Mallon. He stepped out of the car with a tablet in hand and began inspecting data with a group of developers. Keanu zoomed in with binoculars and saw it. The dashboard. Argon Eye. And below it, a setting labeled Survivability Threshold. Ethan whispered, "They're assigning value to human life." Keanu's jaw tightened. "Then we show the world." At dawn, they uploaded their footage. Prya edited the video quickly, adding subtitles, expert commentary, and voice clips from doctors who warned against this kind of technology. Within hours, it went viral. Millions watched. Millions shared. The backlash was instant. "I should not decide who lives or dies. We need ethics in tech. Stop Argon now." Government stepped in. The Icelandic authorities ordered an immediate freeze on the compound's operations. Investors pulled out. Jeffrey Mallon issued a statement calling it a misunderstood tool. But it was too late. Argon was exposed. And the world had chosen. Again. Keanu returned home in silence. No press conference. No parade. Just a message from a nurse he had met once in a broken hospital. She wrote, "I saw the video. Thank you for protecting us again. Not with noise, with truth." He smiled softly and looked out the window at a city still spinning, still distracted, still busy. But this time, he knew it wasn't blind, because a quiet man in a gray suit had reminded it to look deeper. The last stand. The world was quiet again. After the fall of Graham Silvers and the exposure of Argon systems, there was a strange kind of stillness that settled over the news cycle. People moved on. Headlines faded. But Keanu Reeves remained right where he had always been, not in the spotlight, but at the edge of it, watching, thinking, deciding. He sat alone on the rooftop of the bookstore apartment. A soft breeze carried the smell of old pages and distant city smoke. Below, life continued. Cars passed. Children played. The world didn't stop just because someone told the truth. But for Keanu, this moment wasn't about reflection. It was about choice. One final choice. A week earlier, a letter had arrived at his door. No stamp, no return address, just a folded piece of paper, handwritten. "We know you're tired, but the fight needs you, not to expose, not to battle, but to build. We want you to lead something new, something lasting. A council of voices that can guide ethical tech, not just here, but everywhere." Keanu read the note twice. He didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, he walked through every place that had meant something during the past year. The hospitals, the small cafes, the alley where he met Ethan, the courtroom, and the old lab where Lumen Core was first born. There, he stood for a long time, remembering the founder's eyes, the way he spoke about losing his son, about building something that could prevent that kind of loss for someone else. This wasn't about revenge. This had never been about revenge. It was about protection. About purpose. And now, about legacy. Meanwhile, Lena was already working. She had formed a new platform, a global alliance of tech ethicists, activists, journalists, and everyday people, not politicians, not billionaires, just those who cared. They needed someone to be the bridge, someone trusted, someone who had already proven he wouldn't sell his soul. She nominated Keanu. And soon, invitations started pouring in. Not for interviews. Not for applause. For leadership. But there was another letter that came. This one from Graham Silvers, written from his prison cell. Just one page. "You were right. I built walls, not systems. I thought I could outplay the truth. I still don't know how you did it, not with lawyers, but with patience, not with force, but with presence. If you ever speak to my daughter, tell her I'm sorry. Tell her to follow people like you, not me." Keanu read it once, folded it. Put it in a drawer. He wouldn't respond, but he wouldn't throw it away either, because even the worst voices could sometimes whisper something honest. A few nights later, Keanu met with Lena and Ethan on the bookstore roof. They sat on a blanket, drinking tea, city lights blinking beneath them. "You know they want you to lead this thing, right?" Ethan asked. "They want you to be more than a symbol," Lena added. "They want a voice." Keanu didn't answer at first. Then said, "I'm not a leader. You are now." Lena replied. Keanu looked out over the horizon. "I never wanted this." "You didn't want to be a hero either," Ethan said. "But you became one the moment you chose people over profit." Keanu nodded. Slowly. The wind whispered through the air. "Okay," he said. Just one word. But it was enough. 3 months later, the first Global Council for Ethical Technology was formed. No titles. No thrones. Just seats at a round table. Real, not symbolic. Keanu sat beside activists from India, doctors from Africa, engineers from Korea, and students from South America. Together, they didn't just block dangerous systems, they built better ones. They created open software for hospitals in remote areas. They launched transparency programs to show where every tech dollar went. They offered grants to young developers, building tools for education, health, and rescue, not surveillance, profit, or war. And slowly, the industry changed, not because of power, but because of example. Because one man didn't fight with noise. He fought with presence. With stillness. With truth. 1 year after Graham's trial, Keanu returned to that same courthouse. Not for a case, for a ceremony. A memorial plaque was unveiled dedicated not to him, but to the original founder of Lumen Core, a man whose name had been forgotten in headlines, but never in heart. Keanu said a few words. Simple, clean. He lost his son, but he gave the world something that helped save thousands. He didn't have fame. He didn't have wealth, but he had purpose, and that was enough. As he stepped down, a young girl walked up to him, maybe 9 or 10, holding a crumpled drawing. "This is for you," she said shyly. Keanu unfolded it. A picture of a hospital glowing in the dark, with the words, "Thank you for keeping the light on." He bent down and smiled. "You keep it on now," he said. "Your turn." Later that night, he sat by the ocean. Not to disappear. Just to breathe. No phone. No headlines. Just waves. He picked up a stone. Turned it in his hand, then tossed it gently into the sea. Ripples spread far into the dark. Quiet. Strong. Just like him.